Everyone, this is Lee Stevenson and the Converge webinar. I want to welcome everyone. I have the wonderful privilege of serving Converge as the Executive Director of Church Planting, and glad that each and every one of you could take the time to be with us this afternoon from all over the country. Today we're going to be talking about Know, Grow, and Keep Your People in partnership with Church Community Builder, and love what Church Community Builder stands for and their desire to help our churches and ministry do what we do more effectively. And they really understand church systems at a high level. And so I think you're going to enjoy the time that we have with them on this webinar. So before we dive in, I want to just open us up with a quick word of prayer, and then we'll move on with our time. Would you join me? God, thank you so much for the afternoon and the time for us to sharpen who we are as leaders and even our ministry systems. And I'm thankful that there are experts out there that have the ability to kind of guide us and teach us and help us in each one of these areas. I pray that you guide our time, give us wisdom and discernment as to how we can best implement some of these strategies that we hear into our current situations. I pray in your wonderful name, amen. Well, it's my privilege to hand this over to Church Community Builder, and specifically Jeremiah and Shannon. Welcome, guys. Glad that you're with us.
Lee, thanks so much for bringing us in. Thank you so much for the introduction. We're excited to be here today with you and care deeply for our partnership with Converge. We partner with a number of Converge churches, and I'm sure some of our partners are here with us today. And so my role at Church Community Builder is really focused on partnership development. And I'm joined by my colleague and good friend Shannon, and she helps walk a lot of our churches through the evaluation process of Church Community Builder and how our software might support the ministry needs of those churches. And so we're grateful. We've actually been able to both participate in some different Converge events. And I had the pleasure of attending Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota, getting my undergrad in biblical and theological studies. So a lot of great Converge connections, and hopefully what we go through today will be good content, good ideas, both for our current church partners as well as non-church partners, Converge churches that are maybe using a variety of different systems or other tools. But hopefully we're going to try to address things on a number of fronts that we'll be talking about relating to Know, Grow, and Keep Your People. Just kind of a quick background, a little bit about our company, how we got started. We've been around for over 17 years. And when our two co-founders started out, they were helping to plant a church in Southern California and seeing some of the needs that were kind of cropping up in that church that are really not uncommon for church plants in general, as well as for all churches. They wanted to kind of step up and solve some of those problems from a technological perspective. And so there were kind of a couple things that they did from the very beginning that were a little bit different. And so how we fit into the bigger market space of church management systems and how we differentiate ourselves is really the fact that we are software designed for church leaders. So we really do want to equip and empower your church's leaders with tools that are relevant for ministry, that are really kind of focused in on helping you become efficient and effective in growing the kingdom. And there are two passages of scripture that really kind of help to undergird this idea of why we exist and how we are really designed in this way. And so the first passage of scripture comes from the Great Commission. And obviously this is our why. This is what motivates us. We want to help churches to grow the kingdom of God in and through discipleship. This is extremely important to us. And as we think about how we want to come alongside and support churches, this is behind everything and at the forefront of everything. Now, how we do that is really birthed in and through Ephesians 4. in which Paul talks about equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. This idea of getting the right tools in the right people's hands, understanding that God has created us each uniquely and each differently. And so how would this model help my ministry? Well, this is really what we're here to talk to you about today, because we want to be able to give you everything you need to know your people. In today's church, it's very easy for people to kind of stay in the shadows, fly under the radar. It's easy for people to stay right where they're at. But we want to help you to encourage them to step out of the shadows, and we want to put tools in your hands to be able to interact with them, as well as provide easy ways for them to respond and kind of just whether or not they are self-identifiers or you're trying to find them. So everything you need to know your people. We want to give you everything you need to grow your people. Discipleship is not just one aspect of your ministry or your church. It's a combination of multiple aspects of your ministry, of your church. It touches everything. And we want to be able to give you tangible tools to help on this front. And so as we think about this, how people can get connected, how that leads to growth, we want to be able to give you tools on those fronts. And then we want to give you everything you need to keep your people. Knowing your people and helping them grow can be totally derailed if they slip through the cracks or out the back door. But we want to give you the tools that you need to be able to really invest in people, because the people in your church matter. Do you know who they are? Have you provided pathways to engagement in community so they don't fall through the cracks or slip through the back door? We really want to be able to meet you where you're at, whatever your church's context is, whatever your church's goals and objectives are. We believe that there is a valuable combination and relational connection between system and process. And when we say system and process, we're really talking about kind of process being how you do your ministry, what you're focused on. And that's largely what we're going to be talking about today, is ideas around ministry, and then the system that can then support that. And so as we kind of move forward from this point, I'm going to be bringing in Shannon here to kind of tell some stories around these ideas, these concepts of knowing your people, growing your people, and keeping your people. And as we take a look at that, we're going to be looking at that both from a storytelling perspective, those concepts, those big ideas, but also how it relates practically as well from a software perspective. And you're going to be seeing our software both from that kind of desktop version, the software that we have, as well as some of what you would find from us through mobile. And so the first thing that we wanted to kind of discuss here today, obviously, is knowing your people. From the new faces that walk through your door to fully engaged members, knowing your people can be difficult. So let's start with the low-hanging fruit here. As I kind of alluded to, some people will self-identify. Shannon, can you share an example of what that might look like to kind of be responsive as people self-identify?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and I'd love to answer your question, Jeremiah. It's a personal story. I was a new person in a new town at a mega church. I loved Jesus, so that wasn't a problem, but I knew no one. I filled out a Connect card with a prayer request. It was a paper Connect card, so it wasn't like the screenshot you see before you of an online form. It was a paper form. But I filled out a prayer request. I was absolutely shocked when I received an email a couple days later from an unknown person at this mega church saying the prayer team and herself are praying for me. Do you know what that did for me? I was not unknown. God sees and he hears, and so do his people. And what that did for me is I continued to come back to this church, make this church my own, serve on the welcome team there. The church stood really as what it stands to do, be the arms of Jesus in very real and tangible ways. So this can occur at your church as well, but we have to have what Jeremiah was talking about, both technology and processes to connect those lives with what you're trying to do. So if it's a prayer request here, for example, I could fill out my name and the prayer request. If I chose to not have someone follow up with me, our forms allow you to automate that prayer request right into your prayer team. If you want someone to follow up with you, that can go into a follow-up process for prayer requests. So right from this form, whether it's on my mobile device or whether it's and I can show you later how we can do that through a paper form, but it allows you to know your people and follow up with them intentionally.
That's great. So obviously, some of the churches that are on the webinar today probably do have prayer request forms, both paper, maybe electronic. What's another example of how people might self-identify?
Absolutely. Well, and we hear this all the time. Obviously, it's a Connect card that you see before you. A screenshot here is what's presenting of a Connect card. And so this can be paper. This can be an online form. It can be through an app. So these are ways that people self-identify, but you help them through the process, whether that's the welcome area, guest central, new here, start here. Those are all great ways to partner with people and then even make it easier. If they filled out that Connect card through Church Community Builder on an online form, then we already have some information when they go back to check in for the first time. So really a great way, again, to capture information in a partnership. Yes, they are self-identifying, but it's a partnership as you've asked them to.
Hmm. That's great. Well, so not everyone is going to be rock stars like you and self-identify. There are going to be a good amount of people that don't want to raise their hand. I might be one of them. And so if I come to a church, one of the churches that's on the webinar with us, and I'm bringing my family, what would some of those, a way that you might be able to find me as someone that's not self-identifying?
Absolutely. So, and I think this is kind of goes without saying, but obviously, if Jeremiah, you bring you and your family and your precious girls to a new church, something that even though you might not be a self-identifier, you're going to provide us information when you drop off both your daughters at check-in. So that is a great way for us to capture information. And as a side point, because I want this to be so valuable to all of you, as a side point, just make sure you have incredible greeters working your man check-in stations, people that remember names, because that makes all the difference in the world. True story, ministry leader Will Mancini, you might know him. He used to be a pastor years ago, and he remembered this child's name for the second week when this family returned. And that whole family came to know the Lord just because Will remembered their child's name the second time they came back. So that was the sole reason for that family returning. So as we look at what you see before you, this is our check-in where you are adding a family. And once you add a family through check-in, they're automatically already in the software. So in terms of our larger perspective of knowing your people, they're in there. And just a bonus for those first-time guests, so those moms and dads that are really uncomfortable about leaving their kiddos, their most prized possessions before you. Here's a great example of one of my friends, a children's director. She would do this. So what our system does is in a man check-in station, it allows you to send a text message to mom or dad, typically when you're having problems, right? So it'll automatically come up with, please come to the area where you dropped off Chelsea. She actually went in there and formatted this text and just typed in, not formatted, just typed in, to this new mom, Savannah, so grateful you came to church today. Chelsea's doing great and has already made a new friend. Enjoy the service. And so what this did for Savannah, she stopped church shopping. She said, this is home. Look at their intentionality. And so she was connected ever since because of this technology and processes working together for you to know your people and intentionally follow up with them.
That's great. We love getting these stories from our churches. We learn so much from different subject matter experts of different areas of ministry, but we learn so much from our church partners as well. What's maybe one other example of how you might be able to find the people, know who your people are, right, is what we're talking about. If they don't have kids, if they're not going to self-identify, what's another way that is kind of a tangible example of how we can know our people?
Absolutely. So a native way that information is also going to get into your software is through giving. So whether I choose to give via online, or whether I give the old-fashioned way using cash and checks, can't believe that. But if any of those ways that you give, that information is natively going to get into our system. And my friends, if people give, we want to celebrate that. So
Hmm.
especially those first time, second time, third time givers, we thank people for a birthday gift. Let's thank them for giving to the cause of Christ. So when someone gives, let's celebrate, and what we celebrate gets replicated. So I'll talk with you later about how we can celebrate those people that are givers, how you can find them and really follow up with them. But that's another native way of knowing who your people are.
Hmm. That's great. Yeah. We've kind of touched on some elements of knowing your people, uh, self-identifiers, people that are probably going to be less likely to self-identify, but just still some practical examples, some practical ways that you may or may not already be doing. And obviously, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but hopefully uh, get you thinking in some general directions of how system and process might work together for the purpose of advancing the kingdom. The next thing that certainly we want to cover is we want to talk about growing your people. And uh, as people become more engaged in the life of your church, we want to help provide them with opportunities to connect with each other and grow deeper in their faith. It's been said that community happens in circles, not rows. So obviously, growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. It does often happen in and through community and connection, really. So maybe what are some examples of how how we can help people to get connected so that they can grow?
Love to answer that. So here's something we have in our system. It's called needs. And needs is a really easy way for someone to stick their toe in the waters of community. Totally low threshold, easy buy-in. Needs are a one-time sign-up list. And what you see presented before you right now is through our lead app. Lead app is appropriately named. It's for leaders, pastors, staff, and lay leaders, so that you have what you need right at your fingertips to shepherd people. So in this child care coordinators, this image you see, that's a screenshot of our lead app for that team or group. So within a team or a group, one of the functionalities is you have needs. And needs, like I said, are a one-time sign-up list. So a personal story. Christmas about 15 years ago, I was just suffering a lot of personal tragedy, no income, and it was Christmas. And I loved Jesus and wanted to give. So I seriously was rubbing two coins together, and what I did was I wanted to give a box for Samaritan's Purse Operation Christmas Child. It's one of my fondest memories looking back at my faith and how God has grown it and grown it. But logistically, what if I'd forgotten the deadline or lost this opportunity? This is where needs come in. Again, technology supporting the church's process to open doors for people to engage and remind your people about these opportunities. So some examples, you guys, of needs. So whether that's scheduling visits with someone in the hospital, having enough people or enough shifts at your upcoming trunk or treat, like a church in Denver, or scheduling meals for a family in need. You're going to see that right here. Food for the Smiths. That's in our small group, and the Smiths just had a baby, so we're going to schedule needs for them. Or providing, just like one of my now favorite churches, Jason Taylor at Vertical Church, a Converge church in Yuma, Arizona, who makes it hard to get to hell from Yuma because he does amazing community outreach. And those could be facilitated as car washes, and those could be facilitated through needs. Jeremiah, you're going to take the morning shift. Shannon, you're going to take the afternoon shift, and we're going to wash cars for free, and showing God's love in practical ways. So I'm sharing all of these kinds of examples with you so that you can see really clearly how it's easy, one-time opportunities for people to engage with the life of your church and start growing in their faith.
Hmm. Yeah, and really, ultimately, this idea of a kind of a one-time sign up, really low barrier of entry, and
Mhm.
really helping the church to be the church, caring for those internal needs, whatever those might be, as well as kind of focusing on those external needs, as you kind of gave some examples of both, which is fantastic. Well, so once someone has kind of taken that first step towards that growth, towards being connected, what's probably the next step in that process? What would a kind of a further commitment from there in kind of in this trajectory of growth? What would that look like?
Absolutely. So if needs are like sticking my toe in the water, the next logical step of maybe putting my foot in the water of community is what's called my fit. So this is what you're seeing right now is a screenshot of Inside Church Community Builder, and this is my personal fit where you are able to ascertain people's spiritual gifts, passions, abilities, and personality style, and you can track those. And there's some ways you can do that in terms of, do you want to do that in a formal setting? Maybe that's at a monthly, quarterly luncheon, or through a membership track, or through informal pathways like your church's public website, so that people can engage with this. And Church Community Builder provides some integrations with third parties to help make that engagement pathway for people to know more about themselves, to engage in the life of the church in terms of service.
That's great. So the first step is kind of identifying, how God has wired someone, and then the next step would be what? What do you do with that?
Absolutely. So the next step, now that person has known, like when my husband found out at this mega church that these are his spiritual gifts, the next step is, okay, well, what do I do next with that? And so the software absolutely gives you that next logical step. And so what you can see here is a screenshot of positions, and what those are based upon, we're looking at Mike Richardson's profile. Based upon his profile, you're able to see, now that he has personal fit marked in the system, that he's 100% fit for the usher role. He's a 37% fit for assistant group leader. So in Church Community Builder, you're able to build out those positions or serving opportunities with passion, skills, and abilities that you're looking for. And then people then can start browsing those and seeing, gosh, I have a great fit for an usher, so I'm going to go ahead and apply. And even a next step in this software that allows you to, if I'm recruiting, let's say, for greeters, I would then be able to use the software to help me recruit. So really, really, it helps people from both ways, Jeremiah, in terms of if I want to then browse those open positions, but it also helps those leaders and staff that are looking to recruit. So it really helps you from both angles.
Great. So we've kind of covered just a one-off commitment. We've covered maybe a recurring commitment through volunteering, through serving. What's another example that we can kind of talk through related to this concept of growth? How does that happen?
Absolutely. Well, as you and I all know, that growth can't happen in isolation. It's not ever what the Lord intended, right? So this was the methodology of our Savior. When he was here on this planet, he made the first small group with the 12 men that he chose to train, equip, and send. And so just as that incredible example is of the importance of community and growth in community, here I'm showing you an example of how we integrate with your public website to tell the world, because your public website really is your welcome center on the online world, right? Not the brick and mortar, but obviously the majority of people are going to go to your public website before they ever don the doors of your church. So here's an integration of groups that you've put inside Church Community Builder, and you're presenting all of those group opportunities on your church's public website. And so I could then, as a person on your church's public website, I could filter, look at, does this group have childcare? And maybe I'm interested in this group. So I click on it, I find out more about it. I'm able then to email the leader or leaders, as you see here. And again, help me to engage, reduce those barriers of entry, help me to know a little bit more about the group. And that's what we want to help you do, is give people pathways to group life.
That's great. So once they're in a group, what are some of the ways that we can help to support this idea of growth in and through groups?
Absolutely. So Once you're logged into the software, whether you're a leader, right now we're logged in as a leader, or you're a member, you're going to have a view of, you're going to also be able to have a view of this as well. So this is what I want to just kind of orient you as to where you are. You're now inside the group functionality of Church Community Builder. And as you can see, there's a picture, and all of that is completely customizable to fit the needs of that team or serving ministry or staff or group. And you're able then to do, as you can see at the top, messages, calendar, files, needs, positions, schedules, participants. So everything you need to administrate it, everything you need to connect with people, and then obviously grow your people. There's a leadership element to it as well, so that those lay leaders can also have people that are guiding and supporting them to help grow those leaders as well. And then this next screen, what I want to share with you, I just want to broaden your horizon. Sometimes in our brains, when we think groups in church, we just think small groups. So I just want to kind of broaden for the purpose of Church Community Builder, is that a group can be your entire church. A group can be, if you're a campus, it can be a campus. It can be a serving area like beverage service or children's ministry volunteers or small groups. So again, community and growth happens in all of these types of groups. So the software offers you the opportunity to engage at all those levels and to get people in community.
That's great. If you could kind of speak real briefly about maybe something about groups that really lends itself towards this idea of growth. What can you kind of share on the topic of attendance?
Absolutely. Dear friend, a church of about 2,000 in Denver, she is a user of the software, and she said, Shannon, as soon as you guys released mobile presence for my group leaders, she said, I have been able to get 100% of all my group leaders to engage with the app, do the attendance. And so so she's really able, as the pastor and staff of the church, they're really able to now quantify how are their groups doing. They're able to know the health of their groups, who's engaged, who's not engaged. And so I just want to share with you the fact that we definitely have gone mobile, and it provides the tools that we were created for, right? We are here to provide tools for leaders, lay leaders, staff, and pastors, and it's exactly meeting and filling that need, so that you as pastors and staff can really know how people are either falling through the cracks, connected, or disconnected.
That's great. So we've kind of touched on topics related to knowing your people and growing your people. And now we want to shift into kind of talking a little bit about keeping your people, following up with your people so that they feel valued and they keep coming back to your church. And this is an important piece because it kind of does take us full circle. We can't really keep the people that we don't know. We can't really keep the people that aren't growing because if we do, then that might be a different looking church. But what can you kind of speak to just as far as the beginning phases of what would it look like to keep your people?
Absolutely. So yeah, we definitely want to close the back door, and it's closing the back door for those first-time guests. It's closing the back door for members, and that's what we want to do. So when Jeremiah spoke of closing in terms of that full circle, so that's exactly, so the items that I went over with you for knowing your people, we're now going to talk about how this helps you keep them. So here, what you're looking at before you is the mobile preview, or the mobile view, excuse me, of search. And so you can see on the left-hand column different kind of search criteria or categories. And so one of those would be just check-in. So in the realm of check-in, when I talked about earlier that we could automatically tag a new person through check-in as a first-time guest, then when you're seeing here the chevron that says membership type, you would be able then to put in first-time guest, and to then all your first-time guests that are tagged that came through check-in, you would then be able to intentionally follow up with those lives. And the next one that I want to share with you is the same thing. So when we were talking about knowing your people, we talked about giving, we talked about forms, whether the form is online or whether it's a connect card that's a paper, or whether that form was or whether it was through a check-in. What I want to share from that previous slide is that this allows you to go in and search by profile creation. So profile creation allows me to then grab all the people where a profile was created. So these people are brand new to our church and came in through all of those different kind of avenues, and I can follow up with these lives. Another area here, we're looking inside the browser now. We've left the mobile preview, we're inside the browser view. And here we could grab, I just wanted you to know that you can actually do searches based upon forms. So those online forms, we showed you a connection card. One of the responses was 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. We could find out everybody that came to our 9 a.m. and filled out a connect card. And so that's ways that we can, again, search and keep our people. And the last way that I wanted to show you is here's celebrate. Remember when I said, let's celebrate those first time, second time, third time, fourth time givers? Well, we can do that through the software. We can do a people search here on a first gift, second gift, third gift, and then again, reach out to them and say, thank you. This is fulfilling the mission. And these are the ways that it's doing that. Give them specific ways of how their gift is enhancing the kingdom of God in your community.
That's great. Well, so obviously searches are a pretty important part of being able to keep your people, being able to find those people that you've kind of, we've talked about some different ways that an individual might either self-identify or might be identified in and through your ministry's process in the system. What about reporting? How does that kind of speak into this idea of keeping your people?
Absolutely. So we get to the heart of our families. And so how do we get to the heart of our families? It's through their children, right? So again, a dear friend that works at Church Community Builder and used to be a children's director, she said, Shannon, the birthday list here under groups, it was a group report and birthday list. And so you could do that for different children's areas, different children ages. And she would run this at the end of every month. So we'd be running November reports right now. And it's going to give you their address, the age of the child. And she would keep cards in her desk and stamps and ready to go. And she would send those out and say something like, you've now double digits, and obviously turning 10. And Pam would get so many times, that children's ministry director, so many times people saying, this is what kept us coming back, because you really show you care. Another report here that we get asked for all the time, right? We want to know how many, so if you see below, you see under attendance, you'll see individual attendance missed in a row, or, so you can put in whatever parameters you want. How did they miss 3, or they've missed 5, or whatever you're looking for. But again, this helps you to know who's there, who isn't there. And again and again and again, I hear those stories of, because the church noticed I wasn't present, that's what kept me coming back. It's all about that culture of accountability. We really do care for you, and we do miss you. And lastly, this is for everybody in the admin side of life out there at our churches that we so appreciate. Here is at the very bottom, what you'll see. This is under custom reports in Church Community Builder, but the report I want to bring to your attention is that MIA report. I mean, sure, it could be disconnected church members, any of these, but you get to create reports. There's system reports and custom reports in Church Community Builder, and we have the ability for you to schedule them. So when your pastor asks, hey, Shannon, could you give me an MIA report of everybody that's missed the last 4 weeks? You can schedule that out to your pastor, and you never have to deal with that again. So that can be scheduled out weekly, or that can be scheduled out monthly, and your pastor or team will have everything they need with one click of a button.
That's great. So now that you've found the people, right? You found them through searches, you found them through reports. What does it look like to actually follow up with them? What are some examples that you can give just related to kind of caring for those people?
Absolutely. So this is really the heartbeat, and why we save it for the end. This is the heartbeat of Church Community Builder. We were the first in this market space of caring for churches through technology to offer what's called processes. And processes are simply that, right? It's anything that's made up of a series of steps, whether that's a 2-step process or a 30-step process. whatever that is, we want you to be able to shepherd your people. And we know that shepherding people isn't a custom field that I can just click and it's done. That is not how God made this life for humanity. It's a process. And so our processes reflect that. So examples of some processes would be obviously what you see before you, a guest connection card follow-up. And in this one, you're going to see they filled out a connect card. And if it was online, it's going to automate to the areas of interest. Let's say I filled out, I'm interested in baptism and I'm interested in serving. So if that happened through an online form, it can therefore automate to those two places. You don't have to put them there. And then the people that are over those steps of serving and baptism will be notified and can follow up with them. A story that I want to share. We've been focusing a lot on first-time guests, which is so valuable, but we also want to focus on our regular attenders and members, and maybe even those outside the church. And so the story that comes to mind is it was a church that was using processes for bereavement, and their final step in this process was at the year mark to send a card to family members. And that's exactly what they did. So the year mark came up, they were notified anniversary, and the adult son who had lost his mother, who was a member of this church, the son lived in a different city, not a part of this church, received a card at the year anniversary of his mother's death from his mother's church. That was the one thing that brought him back to God. Now, I know all of us in the church want to be this intentional, but where do we find the time? That's where processes and technology really come into play to help you, right? Because you don't have to be over that process. I could be over that process, and I would be notified at that year date so that I get out to all the family members a card. And when I was sharing this story at a conference, a woman raised her hand and said, that's exactly my story. I serve at this church, and I was brought back to the church because my loved one's church sent a card to me at the year anniversary. So that is what processes can do. Processes can bring people that have nothing to do with your church, really, that can bring them back to God. So whether that process is benevolence, bereavement, whether that's a shepherding or a spiritual formation process, whether that's for pastors to connect with their volunteers, whatever that process is, we can help you, and we can help you systematically with that. So what you're looking at before you is a step or a cue in that larger connection card guest follow-up. And so here is the step of a welcome letter, and you can see the steps. And again, this is customizable to whatever fits your culture. But this, like I said, it doesn't matter if it was a paper connect card. This would then give me the directions of how I can follow up with this new guest named Manny that's been put into this process. And so let's say I had the auspicious opportunity to talk to Manny. So then I would put the notes in here, and I would say, had a great conversation with Manny. He's new in town. He has a family of 4 kiddos and a wife, and he's really looking forward to getting involved with our church. I could put that in there. And then the next view is I can see what processes Manny's been a part of. So he's already finished filling out the volunteer follow-up, as you can see at the bottom. He's in process for spiritual formation. If I find from my conversation with him that I need to add him to another process, maybe a prayer request process, I can do that right here. And another area is that my churches so value is anytime you can see where a person is involved in your church, where they're leading, what groups they're leading, where they're a member, what positions they're filling. So when you connect with Manny for the first time, you're not going to say, hey, are you new to our church? You're going to be able to say, gosh, thank you so much for all the ways you're serving in our church. It just allows you to be informed so your connection can be real intentional. And then finally, an area is family members. You're able to also see, like I said, you're able to see who's connected to Manny, his spouse and his children. And so when you're here, you can say, hey, how are your kiddos doing? Are they getting involved with the church? So it just really gives you a lot of information to know, grow, and therefore keep your people.
That's great. So the question that comes to mind, obviously, that we have, we've kind of covered the system and process of know, grow, and keep, as you mentioned. How do we know? How do we know whether or not these things are happening? And one of the ways that I kind of think that oftentimes when I look back on my own ministry experience, I relied a lot on my gut. Um, what was it? What was I feeling? What was I experiencing? What did I remember? Kind of general impressions and that type of stuff. But um, we actually have something that kind of takes us a little bit beyond that, and it's called metrics. And metrics is really kind of the why behind it. Is we really do want to help quantify this idea of know, grow, and keep. We want you to be able to see where you're at, where you've been, so that you can help plot a course moving forward. And if you can kind of think about metrics, they really fall into three categories of attendance, serving, and giving. And you get to dictate where that information is coming from. You get to dictate how it's being viewed, what it's being compared against, the scope and scale of it. You get to kind of dictate maybe how you build these out for different leaders in different areas of ministry. Oftentimes, I like to kind of use the example of children's ministry because they probably don't have a lot of giving that you're eager to track, but they probably do have attendance and serving that would be relevant for that leader specifically. But as we're kind of thinking through these topics of know, grow, and keep, metrics can really help to qualify and quantify what your ministry experience has been and is. So it kind of it really helps to go in tandem with your gut. What you're experiencing, what you're feeling, what you notice can then be backed up by data. So if we think about searches and reports and even process cues as far as that micro level, that person specific, the metrics and the data can be the metadata that tells the story of what's going on. And so we can actually make informed decisions around ministry based upon this information. And hopefully it's helpful for you to kind of understand not just at the person specific level, but also at that higher level as well. We want to give you both because you need both. And so tracking and measuring happens automatically through the different examples that Shannon gave, that we've kind of walked you through from the both sides of system and process, and that can funnel in and through and to metrics. And so that's really how we can help on the front of knowing these things and quantifying these things. And so the last thing that we want to cover with you before we launch into Q&A is just this initiative that we're running for our Converge partners.
Absolutely. We do, like Jeremiah said, love Converge, love what Converge stands for. It's such a great partnership. And so we wanted to bless our Converge churches. And so this has never been done before. Like I mentioned to any of you that are out there that were at Expo West pre-con with us, this has never been done before in our history. So what this is a promotion that we're offering for Name Your Price. So what this is, for any church, a Converge church that is 300 or less in average weekly attendance, we have a special promotion. And what that means is truly you get to name your price for the software, and all that you'll be responsible for on year one is just paying a one-time setup fee. And this doesn't include any additional services. We do have free training as well, but it's like if you needed data migration or something like that. This offer will expire December 15th, 2017. So we've got about a month and a half. And this, you can see that URL up there. And I know as a follow-up to all of the attendees, you are going to get this as well, this landing page, but you're always welcome to come engage with us at just churchcommunitybuilder.com. And there are ways for you to see a demo or to engage with any of us, Jeremiah or myself. We'd be happy. And then there's a whole team of us to engage and answer your questions. But this is strictly for our Converge churches because, again, we believe in that partnership so much.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Jeremiah. I appreciate the great information on helping us understand, again, how to know and grow and keep our people. And again, we appreciate the partnership that Converge has the opportunity to partner with Church Community Builder. For those that have been listening, we have an opportunity to take about next 10 minutes or so to do a little bit of Q&A. There may be questions swirling around in your mind about implementation or even what Church Community Builder software actually can offer. I want to encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your page, and you can submit your questions there. And as those come in, I'll read those out to Jeremiah and Shannon for them to be able to engage with us on that. Why questions start coming through, Shannon and Jeremiah, let me just ask you this question. What do you guys usually recommend when it comes to overall implementation for a church? Do they all need to buy into the process? Is it best to have one person's kind of primary implementer? What do you guys suggest?
I'm happy to answer that. So yeah, definitely what we always encourage, Lee, at the beginning of the process is we do want to make sure that key leaders are invested in that process, right? So at the very beginning, something that I appreciate about our process of supporting a church is, number one, making sure we have more than just one person saying, yes, let's do it. We really want, because I know what that means on the back end is that means that people, therefore, if they've bought in on the front end, they will therefore be using it on the back end. So that really is important. So executive sponsorship behind the initiative is important. I'm not saying that the executive pastor or the senior pastor needs to understand everything about it. That's not what I'm saying, but they do need to be behind it because everything begins with leadership. And then in terms of implementing it, I would definitely share that certainly there is a master administrator, we call it in Church Community Builder, that has privileges and doles out privileges. But the whole software was made to be an approachable software so that, as you saw so much today about group leaders, I could take that as a group leader and I can run with it. So I don't have to know everything about the software, but I do need to know what's important to me. But somebody like a master administrator, they're going to know more of all the details of the software. But we made it in such a way that you can take your area and certainly run with that. Does that help?
Excellent. Yeah, I appreciate that. Next question is, does CCB have the ability to offer signups for events and then also take specific payments for those events? Example being youth group, retreats, you can kind of fill in the blank.
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that you saw kind of at the beginning there of know your people, and one of the examples, Shannon shared a personal example of her filling out a prayer request card at a church, and then she also kind of talked briefly about connection cards. That was a screen. Those screenshots were of a form that is generated in and through our software, and those forms are extremely outreach friendly as well. You can use them for a number of things, including the things mentioned in the question, and we do have a number of different payment processors that work with us that can be used in conjunction with our form so that payment can be received for those events right then and there. So it's a very seamless process. And to Shannon's point, as she kind of mentioned our forms earlier, a lot of that information is actually able to be collected without having to have a username and password, and can be automated behind the scenes into multiple areas of Church Community Builder. And so yes, on all fronts to that question, and it's a fantastic way to be able to do some outreach as well, and just kind of reach beyond your church's walls.
Great, I appreciate that. Just quickly, when it comes to the mobile platform, one of our questions is it equally friendly between Apple and Android?
Yes, a resounding yes. So the Lead app is available in both of those applicable app stores to download, and friendly in both.
Excellent. Here's a great question presented. We currently use Planning Center in our church and have loved the services side of the platform, but have had somewhat been hampered by the people side of the app. Does CCB work with the services platform in terms of populating teams, or does it have a comparable function?
It does have we do have a comparable function as far as the teams are concerned, but one of the things that we don't offer native to our software would be this planning out a service with different minute marks and that type of stuff. But a lot of what you saw in and through the grow your people examples and how we kind of showed some screenshots of groups would be able to answer these questions or kind of address this. I'm a worship leader myself. I have used Planning Center. I typically schedule all of my volunteers, my band, in and through Church Community Builder, and I communicate with them in and through Church Community Builder, and then certainly can use something like Planning Center to plan out my service. But the great thing about having volunteer scheduling in one location, a couple of items on this. One, our software looks across all different areas of serving. And so if I serve in multiple areas, it's not going to double book me. The other thing that kind of relates back to this bigger picture that we were talking about of growing your people is that if you're housing your volunteer scheduling in one location, that really does speak into all three phases of know, grow, and keep. And then how you know in and through searches, reports, and metrics is very much affected by this idea. And so yes, we certainly can meet your needs in being able to manage people, and especially when it comes to teams.
Great, I appreciate that. Another question, I love the idea of putting needs out there for new people. How do you actually go about managing those details? You know, they said we typically only send needs to a very specific group that has already agreed to do things.
Oh, great question. So needs, like I said, can be hosted by, it can be hosted by your whole church, right? Or it can be hosted by a certain team or certain ministry. So it can be as wide of a net as you want. So if you want it to be your whole church and that need to go out, like something like a Samaritan's Purse, Operation Christmas Child, that would be a need that could go out to everybody. It's applicable to go out to everyone. So that's who hosts it, and therefore who's managing it. Something I didn't share about when I was talking about needs on the user side, the nice thing for managing it for a user is when I take that need through my emails inbox. So those come, so that need will go out as an email. You're informing everybody. It's a responsive design email. I'm just the user that takes that need for that Samaritan's Purse gift, let's say. I'm then therefore automatically reminded via email 2 days before that need comes up. So there is some inherent management aspects to it as well that I wanted you to know about. And in terms of who's managing it internally at your church would be who's ever a leader or over that need for that hosting group or team.
Great. Next question, based on the 1 year kind of partnership that we have with Converge, after that year is up, how does typically the pricing structure work after that?
Yeah, so a couple things will affect the cost. One is going to be the version of software to best support your ministry. That's kind of, as Shannon alluded to, we really like to have that conversation with your church to figure out what is your church's context, what are your goals and objectives, and how that then kind of relates to what version will support your ministry the best. We have 3 versions of our software. Most churches typically fit within our middle version or our highest version, and that's going to be one determining factor. The other determining factor is going to be your church's normal weekly attendance. And the way that we kind of think about that is just, hey, on a normal weekend, throwing out kind of those high water marks of Christmas and Easter, how many adults, kids, everyone do you just have physically present during worship? And so certainly if you're interested in exploring Church Community Builder, one of the things that we do fairly early on in the process is discuss kind of the cost implications. And because we have a number of different attendance marks or brackets, it does kind of change, but it is very scalable.
Excellent. I have one more question that we have time to get to, and it's based on the email process of the software. Is there a way when you're emailing people out to be able to CC individuals on the emails versus creating a group to receive the email? And then also, how do you confirm whether or not somebody actually received the email?
Yeah, that's so there isn't internal analytics. Like if you were to send out through our mail merge or something like that, like if you used a mail merge, something like an external, like a MailChimp or something like that, you are able then to have those analytics of when somebody opens and click-through rates. That isn't internal to Church Community Builder. So we don't have internal analytics that allows for you to know that. So that would be number one. We do integrate. We integrate. CCB Chimp is the integration that we offer with MailChimp. So if that's really important to you to be able to have those kinds of analytics, they're available to you. And in terms of who you want to send an email to, it doesn't have to just be through a group. Any kind of those searches that we talked about today, remember there were a variety of searches. So if I wanted everybody that was, that had an 11-year-old, or everybody that went last year to our Christmas event, or anything like that. So searches allow you then to email those people. So you don't have to be in a group or a team or anything like that in order to email and reach out to people at your church.
Shannon, Jeremiah, thank you so much for the time and giving us a good view of CCB and just how people can use software, use technology to enhance the ministry experience. I want everybody to know that following the completion of the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email that will give you access to the presentation at a later time. And also want to encourage you, if you're around and you're looking to sharpen your skills as a church planter, maybe prepare yourself in church planting, know somebody it is. Our next Church Planting 101 class will be this January in San Antonio, Texas. We'd love to have you come hang out with us for a couple days there. You can register for that course on the converge.org website on the church planting side of things. Again, thank you again so much for taking the time to be with us. We will continue to put out more resources on a regular basis. Join us next time. Thanks again.